More than 60% of seniors with muscle weakness are doing this one sleep habit every night, and it's silently accelerating sarcopenia. You could be one of them. Here are the warning signs doctors miss. Somewhere along the way, we normalized broken sleep. We told ourselves that waking up tired is just part of getting older, that 5 or 6 hours is good enough, that tossing and turning all night is simply the price of aging. I've heard this rationalization thousands of times in exam rooms. Doc, I get by. But here's the terrifying truth no one spells out. Getting by on poor sleep after 60 is not neutral. It's not harmless. It's a hidden muscle-wasting habit. And biologically speaking, your body interprets it as a signal to start breaking itself down. Most people think muscle loss, what we call sarcopenia, is caused by inactivity alone. So they focus on walking more, stretching more, maybe adding light weights. That matters, yes. But what almost nobody tells you is that bad sleep can accelerate muscle loss just as aggressively as not moving at all. I've seen patients who exercise faithfully, eat reasonably well, and still grow weaker year after year because their nights are sabotaging their days. Sleep is not passive rest, sleep is active repair. And when that repair doesn't happen, the damage doesn't pause, it accumulates. One of the best analogies I've ever heard comes from longevity medicine. Sleep is the overnight repair shift. While you're unconscious, your body sends out cellular crews to rebuild muscle fibers, restore hormone balance, and stabilize your nervous system. But if that shift is cut short or constantly interrupted, those workers never finish the job. The damage from daily life, stairs, balance corrections, small stumbles, even standing up from a chair, just stacks up, night after night, week after week, until one day the legs feel weaker, the grip less secure, and confidence starts to fade. And this is where the story gets deeply personal. Loss of strength doesn't just mean thinner muscles, it means fear. Fear of falling, fear of needing help, fear of losing independence in your own home. I've watched patients become cautious, then withdrawn, then isolated. Not because they wanted to be, but because their bodies no longer felt reliable. And almost always, when we trace the timeline back, poor sleep was there long before the cane, long before the fall, long before the diagnosis. Here's the part I want you to hold on to. This is not about perfection, and it's not about sleeping pills. You don't need 8 flawless hours in a silent monastery. What you need is to stop unknowingly feeding a process that's working against you. There are practical, realistic sleep corrections, small shifts, that can dramatically slow muscle loss and restore strength over time. No hype, no extremes. Just biology working with you instead of against you. And once you understand what's really happening in your body after 60, you'll never look at sleep the same way again. For many people over 60, sleep quietly erodes. Not in a dramatic way, but gradually. 5 hours becomes normal, 6 feels like a luxury. The body adapts just enough to function, masking what is happening underneath. Short and fragmented sleep alters the biology of muscle repair, reducing nighttime protein synthesis and allowing cortisol to remain elevated. Over time, this hormonal environment favors breakdown rather than rebuilding, even in people who stay active and eat well. The damage accumulates silently. Muscles still work, but they are repaired incompletely night after night like an engine running without proper maintenance. Strength fades slowly, balance becomes less reliable, and fatigue appears where it never existed before. This isn't about willpower or effort, it's about consistency. When sleep shrinks, the body loses its primary window for repair, and muscle tissue pays the price. Sleep that looks long enough on paper can still fail the body when it is fractured. Frequent awakenings disrupt the deep stages where metabolic coordination happens, and one of the first systems affected is insulin signaling. As sleep becomes fragmented, muscles grow less responsive to insulin, meaning the nutrients circulating in the bloodstream struggle to enter the cells that need them most. Protein may be consumed, calories may be adequate, yet muscle repair remains incomplete. The result is a strange paradox many older adults experience. Effort without reward. Strength training feels harder, recovery takes longer, and gains seem to vanish. Muscles resemble a warehouse with locked doors. Supplies arrive, but access is limited. Over time, this inefficiency weakens tissue and accelerates loss, even when daytime habits appear supportive. Long nights are often assumed to be protective, yet extended sleep can sometimes signal that recovery is not actually taking place. When sleep quality is poor, the body may remain in bed longer trying to compensate, without achieving the deep restorative phases needed for muscle repair. Inflammation, disrupted circadian rhythms, and underlying metabolic strain often accompany this pattern, creating conditions linked to higher rates of muscle loss. The body may appear rested on the clock, but feel depleted in function. Waking without energy, stiffness that lingers, and unexplained weakness are common signs. Remaining inactive for longer hours does not correct the underlying imbalance. Just as a malfunctioning engine isn't repaired by staying in the garage, muscle tissue does not rebuild simply because time in bed increases. If protecting strength and independence matters to you, subscribe here. Each week we uncover how sleep and aging biology really shape muscle health. Muscle does not grow or stabilize from effort alone. It responds to signals, and sleep is one of the strongest amplifiers of those signals after 60. During deep sleep, anabolic hormones rise, and muscle cells become more receptive to both protein and mechanical stimulus. When sleep is poor, that same workout and the same meal produce a muted response, as if the volume has been turned down on repair. This explains why some bodies stall despite consistency. The stimulus is present, but the biological environment is unreceptive. When sleep quality improves, the exact same inputs suddenly begin to work again. Strength returns not because effort increased, but because the body finally entered a state where rebuilding was allowed to occur. Nighttime breathing disturbances place the body under a kind of stress most people never consciously register. When airflow is repeatedly interrupted during sleep, oxygen levels fluctuate in a way the brain interprets as danger. Each drop triggers a stress response designed for emergencies, not rest. Adrenaline rises, heart rate spikes, and the body is pulled out of restorative sleep again and again. By morning, the night may seem uneventful, yet internally, the body has spent hours in a state closer to alarm than recovery. Muscle tissue is especially vulnerable to this pattern. Muscles depend on steady oxygen delivery to maintain their structure and repair microscopic damage. When oxygen is limited or inconsistent, the body shifts priorities. Survival systems take precedence and long-term maintenance is deferred. Inflammatory signals increase, blood vessels become less responsive, and anabolic hormones that support muscle preservation are suppressed. Over time, this environment favors gradual muscle loss, even in people who remain active during the day. What makes this process so insidious is how indirectly it shows up. Strength doesn't disappear overnight. Instead, there is a creeping heaviness in the legs, slower recovery after physical effort, and a sense that stamina has quietly shrunk. Balance becomes less reliable, not because the muscles are unused, but because they are undernourished at the cellular level. The body is asking weakened tissue to perform tasks it no longer has the resources to support. Daytime sleepiness often accompanies this pattern, though it is frequently misunderstood. Fatigue is blamed on age, boredom, or lack of motivation, when in reality, it reflects a nervous system that never fully powered down. The brain and muscles wake up already depleted. This chronic exhaustion further alters hormonal balance, reinforcing the same cycle that undermines strength. Muscle fibers thin not from neglect, but from constant exposure to stress signals that tell the body to conserve rather than rebuild. There is also a compounding effect. Reduced muscle mass lowers metabolic efficiency, which in turn worsens glucose regulation and inflammation. That inflammation feeds back into sleep disruption, tightening the loop. What began as a breathing issue during the night gradually becomes a full body problem, affecting mobility, confidence, and resilience. Many people are surprised to learn that changes in strength and stability can trace back to how the body breathes while asleep. Seen through this lens, muscle loss after 60 is not always a simple matter of effort or age. It can be the downstream consequence of nights spent in physiological turmoil. When sleep fails to deliver oxygen and calm, muscles are left to function in a state of quiet deprivation, slowly eroding strength in a way that feels mysterious until the connection becomes clear. Muscle loss after 60 is often described as unavoidable, a slow erosion that must simply be managed. Yet when sleep is examined closely, a different reality appears. Night after night, sleep determines whether the body enters a state of repair or remains locked in preservation mode. This distinction matters because muscle is expensive tissue. It requires energy, hormonal support, and a sense of biological safety to be maintained. When sleep is inconsistent or shallow, the body begins to treat muscle as optional, gradually reallocating resources away from strength and toward basic survival. What makes sleep so powerful is not perfection, but regularity. The body responds to predictable rhythms. When those rhythms are stable, internal systems align in ways that favor rebuilding. Hormones that protect muscle rise at the right times, inflammation settles, and the nervous system shifts out of constant vigilance. Over weeks and months, this environment allows muscle fibers to retain thickness and responsiveness. Strength does not return suddenly, but it stops slipping away, which is often the first and most meaningful change. This process reaches far beyond physical capability. Strength underpins independence in subtle but essential ways. It determines how confidently a person moves through their day, how quickly they react to a misstep, and how much energy remains for life beyond basic tasks. When muscle weakens, fear often fills the gap. Movements become cautious, activity narrows, and the world slowly shrinks. Sleep, though rarely blamed, frequently sits at the start of this chain reaction. The idea of sleep as an overnight repair shift captures the reality well. During those hours, the body evaluates damage accumulated from gravity, movement, and effort. Muscle fibers are patched, neural connections refined, and metabolic waste cleared. When this process is interrupted repeatedly, repairs remain unfinished. Over time, these small deficits add up, not as pain but as reduced capacity. The body can still function, but with less margin for error. When sleep improves, something subtle but important happens. The body regains permission to rebuild. Combined with adequate protein intake and regular physical challenge, sleep creates the conditions that allow strength to stabilize and often improve. This does not reverse time, but it slows the rate of decline in a way that feels tangible. Legs feel more reliable, balance steadies, and daily tasks demand less effort. Aging does not require surrendering strength. In many cases, the body has been working with limited resources, adapting as best it can. Restoring consistent restorative sleep gives it back one of its most critical tools. From that foundation, resilience has room to re-emerge, and independence becomes something that can be preserved rather than gradually lost. Subscribe for science-backed ways to stay strong as you age.